everyone. This is Maricela at the Las Casas Communications Institute, and we are back with Edward Hadas, Research Fellow of the Institute, who will be talking to us today about St. Elizabeth Seton. Hello, Edward.
Hi there. Nice to be back.
I'm glad. So, could you please tell us a bit about Elizabeth Seton? I, in fact, don't know anything about her, aside from I think there's a couple of educational institutions in the United States with her name.
For example, Seton Hall University is named after her, although she didn't found it. She's often described as the founder of parochial or Catholic education in the United States. That's not quite fair. But what she is a very interesting saint. She lives at the end of the 18th and beginning of the 19th century. She was one of the first high-profile converts in the United States to Catholicism, she was from a leading New York family, and she eventually, for business reasons, with her husband, goes to Italy, meets an Italian who brings her into, well, it's a little complicated, but let's shorten it to say that they bring her into the church. She was a woman of great holiness as an Anglican, but then becomes a woman of great holiness as a Catholic, is moved down from New York to Maryland, where most of the Catholics in the then new United States were, founds a school, and sets up a little convent that becomes eventually the Sisters of Charity, and the order starts to expand, and she becomes, well, she is a very holy, saintly woman. We have writings of her. And she becomes quite rapidly venerated as an American saintly woman, and eventually is canonized for that. Her orders actually have various fights over the years, but the process of canonization brought them together, and we start to get through that process really a clearer view of what kind of person she was, and indeed why we should be interested in her in the 21st century.
All right. Is there anything particular that she wrote that you would recommend us reading?
No, in fact, when you read what she writes, I wouldn't say it's to the 21st century taste. It's not actually what she says that's interesting. It's the impression she made on people. And I think also that what is interesting is from a point of view of living in a secular, non-Catholic culture, how you make an impression on people, how you live your Catholic life. She was a real pioneer in that, in the sense that she was a convert. She eventually sets up a community of Catholics, but her vision of being a city on the hill, to use an image that's Christian, deeply Christian, and one that was cherished by the Puritans and Protestants, radical Protestants in the United States. Her vision of that you live a very holy life, of life surrounded by the Eucharist, or built around the Eucharist. I guess the life surrounds the Eucharist, not the other way around. Was very influential in what was then a very small and a bit beleaguered Catholic community in this new country. And her emphasis on education, while she herself died relatively young and there weren't a lot of schools, her sense that what American sisters should do was they should go out into the world and teach young Catholics, teach them the faith. Her schools were often open to Protestants, but she had a very strong notion that we teach in the Catholic truth, along with becoming young ladies. They were mostly girls' schools. And that vision was very influential in Catholic education in the United States. And although she didn't have an vision of a parochial school system, that is Catholic schools everywhere, the vision that Catholics had an obligation to educate their children in the faith, and that education should be first rate for Americans, is one that was sustained. Unfortunately, it's fallen away a bit now, but it was one that was very influential and rightly so, of how to be a Catholic in the modern world.
Now, given that your discussion group is based on reading texts, in her case, what did you use?
You're still worrying about this question of what should we read? There's a very good biography of her that I read, and I'm afraid I can't remember the name right now, but there's several actually good biographies of her that have citations from her text. It might be worth saying that when you read her, you have to sort of get into a mode of a lot of pious words that just that doesn't ring as true now as it did in the 18th or 19th century, early 19th century. So you have to read through this. And one of the things that's most moving about her is the way that everyone that met her was absolutely overwhelmed by her holiness. Very simple, direct holiness in meeting her. When she puts pen to paper, it sounds like maybe possibly a little bit sentimental, but there was a way in which she clearly lived and showed herself that all bishops, priests, brothers, and parents and Protestants just melted, as it were, at her feet because she was so obviously a greatly holy woman. And at first she was basically seen as sort of a catch for the Catholics, but she rapidly became actually just a role model for the priests who worked with her in her very simple dedication to the cause of really the cause of holiness expressed through education. So there are a couple of very good biographies. One, there's more scholarly and less scholarly ones, but she's really quite inspirational to read about.
Oh, well, thank you. That was very enlightening. I'd never, I mean, I've heard her name many times, but it's good to know a bit more about her now. Anyways, thank you for coming today. And I look forward to talking to you later about the other women saints.
We've got 3 more to go. Nice to be here. Thank you.